Welcome back to the Beyond Solutions Boardroom, presented by Intelligent HQ and hosted here at Groupe INSEEC in London. We're here today with Ghislaine Boddington, the creative director and co-founder of Body Data Space, and we're going to talk a little bit about women in tech, some of the work that this particular business is doing with it, some of your own activities as well, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about the issues and the answers and whether we're making any progress.
Well, we are Body Data Space. We're based in East London, in Tech City, and we're a collective, really, of 16, 18 people. And we are completely mixed, gender mixed, between men and women, working together across a number of years, creating experiences, looking at the body and data and its relationship to virtual and physical space, and how we can extend those experiences for a wider public. And during that work period, I, as a woman, have been involved in this technology scene since the early 90s, and I'm coming from a dance background, so my core base of collaborators have been dance performing artists who, of course, are maybe slightly more equal in the women percentage within that sector. And it has become quite noticeable across the 20 years that there's not so many of us who have got the position or the possibilities to extend from the female perspective into the technology space.
As in pretty much every time you're in the room.
Yes, it's...
I've experienced the same thing myself.
Yes, and I think I present a lot. I have to say, to be honest, probably 90% of the presentations I've done across the last 20 years have been on panels where I'd possibly be the only woman, maybe there's one other woman, she might be the chair or I might be the chair. So it's one of those environments where even when I'm at conferences, technology is discussed, we're very much listening to it, we're taking it into our mixed group, but we're often faced with a day of mainly male speakers, and often this issue is also culturally based. Obviously we're in the UK, but those will be mainly white male speakers too. So that diversity of discussion isn't there in those conferences. The different opinions, the different ways of looking things, the width and breadth of the vision, the passions, the understanding of the customer from both gender positions, male and female, isn't actually, I believe, happening enough within the tech space.
Did you know that from my point of view, that's exactly true, but it's not just that problem. It's also the business side, the sales side, the security side, the technology side. They're not tied up. And they're all white men. So if they can't even play well together, that makes your challenge, the challenge of women fighting against that is probably even graver if I think about it, because they can't even play nice together.
Well, it's not the greatest world, and I think it's a bit of a tough business scene, and with the recession and SMEs, I'm sure that tension in the base of the scene is more there in place now than it was perhaps 10, 15 years ago, when there was much more possibilities to collaborate and to barter and exchange between you, men and women. And I think that the issue is more in actually how those particular tensions bring up a feeling slightly of a more macho world, which is not necessarily, but which is rising from the tensions within the scene. Which
the
makes
overreaction.
Yeah, an overreaction, and because everyone is slightly stressed, trying to keep going, trying to keep money going through. And that slight feeling of this laddish edge of tech scene, is quite off-putting to women actually wanting to potentially come into it, and even more so for teenagers and young women looking at career paths of the future. So yes, we've always worked strongly on trying to get an equal base of women into our work, into curations, into discussions, into conferences, etc., workshopping. But over the last 2 or 3 years, working on quite large-scale technology curations and projects, we've realised the problem's really come to a kind of key point. And I'm sure you've noticed too, and many of the viewers will have, that there's a lot more in the press and media pointing out the issues that there are for women within this digital marketplace, which is the growth career area of the future. Of course, in majority of jobs now, everyone is using a digital interface. Within the tech scene itself, within the creative industries, this is the innovation area, this is the business startup point, this is where people will hopefully make more money in the future. We've still got a major problem. Only 5% of new SMEs in the tech scene are being started by women founders. There is still a major problem of the number of girls and women going into those companies. Many SMEs are, small, there's 2 to 3, 4, may all be male. And of course, it's a slightly laddish culture. It's kind of based on lads and lager, and it's not necessarily the most attractive place for women to hang out for, maybe once a week, but not to spend your life and working environment in and networking in.
And the average geek isn't necessarily very politically astute.
No, and I think often
The average.
we're discussing here what is called an unconscious bias. We've all been educated through society to think in certain ways, and we were talking earlier about the blue and the pink and the pinkification, even the bluification of culture, and how we're all led up through these routes. It's a known fact that actually most women working in tech are doing so and have had to fight their way through a bit more and be a bit more assertive and a bit more clear about what they want to do. They have to have a passion, a direction. Actually, 30% of us have actually had technology in working at home with one parent. So that's still a trend that's happening.
Well, see, that happens a lot on the male side as well.
Yes, for
and
sure.
On the male side, we also don't have enough people going into science and technology for what the future is going to need. We have a lot more people trying to be pop stars and things than we have actually trying to be data scientists and computer scientists.
No, totally, and we've got a major issue for boys as well as girls taking up STEM subjects and moving into computer sciences and coding, etc. But we are focusing at this point on actually really trying to at least give a leg up to the women and girls side, which has advanced massively. So we're working at the moment on a series of events which are more of a celebration of actually women shifting digital and coming into the digital scene. Their diversity adding, the diverse voice that they bring adding to the baseline of any company, any discussion, from the design process, the conceptual process, right the way through management, through executive positions. And actually the figure of 8 that does within any SME or large-scale company back into being reflected back into the customer base and the economic value that comes back into the company itself. The customer base out there is 52% women. And in fact, women have more buying power than
They
men.
have more decision process
and make more decisions
more
on
often
it.
than not, regardless of how averages of who's in charge. There are some things that when they're in charge of the buying power, that's a fair bit of strength. I need you to elaborate on some of my own perceptions, okay? 30 odd years in the technology sector.
Yes.
I mentioned to you before that I think the right person needs to be promoted for the job, and that I'm not all that big on what we've seen over the years in all kinds of places for positive discrimination to try to bring people into spots and the like. And we know that there's lots of pitfalls with all of that stuff, but from a technology space, I used to be a programmer, right? I worked with not nearly enough, but lots of lady programmers, women in the tech space, both in management and in the technical side. Now, the management is a completely different issue, but when you've got a techie, you do stuff and you accomplish it and you do it well and you do it fast and you do it better and a merit-based system works. It's when you get to that point of management and control is where I think a lot of that goes wrong in the tech sector. As long as we have the people coming in, if you're a female and you can code and you can outcode that guy, nobody's ever going to argue with you and everybody's going to think you're better than he is. We don't care, right? From that perspective, what you're looking for is results and capabilities, and there's the respect that you'll get for being better at what I do than I am is because I want to learn from you, and I don't care whether you're a male or a female. I think when you're, and if that's a mechanical engineer or an electronics designer or a dancer,
in any area.
anything, that applies really quite well where you can base on merit. But when it gets into this less quantifiable stuff, this is the part where I think the male prejudices are probably getting in the way, and I think probably where some of the really bad programming from youth makes some of the ladies defer when they shouldn't. And pardon me, I hope ladies is not...
No, that's fine. I think the word merit is very important. We have all got to obviously reach the quality and the standard that's required out there. So I'm not someone to say that a woman should get a job because she's a woman, because if she's not as good as the man there too. But we do need to recognise that meritocracy is a judgment, and actually that judgment in the main still, particularly in Western world, is coming from white male. backgrounds. So on any interviewing panel, for example, I know that large companies today are trying very hard to make sure there is always a woman on the interviewing panel too. But that hasn't been true in the last 30 years or so. Most women go through male-only interview panels alongside other men who are interviewing for that job. And of course, you know, that if you just think about it, it's a completely natural thing that there will be, you know, a meritocracy marker.
The prejudice
for,
is...
there's a relativity that works easier. Interviews often now are, you know, tick box and marking and scoring. Even the subjects that are scored are actually, you know, these forms are often made by men. It leans towards male aptitudes, male attitudes towards things. So as the workplace is changing, the skills are vital. So any, say, woman coder needs to be as strong a coder as her male equivalent to get that job. But there may be skills that she has which are process-based, which are much more relevant to today than they were in the past. And I could talk about this a lot, but if we use the word collaboration, it is clear that women collaborate more easily. And collaboration processes, even in a coding base, are being advocated today as a much more positive way of software development happening. Rather than, you know, a room of 40 people all working on their own, just coding, not even relating to the people next to them who might be working on the same piece of code, yeah? That's kind of now being pushed out the window, and there's a much more thinking of actually, you know, crossovers, exchange between each other. The SMEs are doing it, definitely, you know, in the smaller groupings. There's constant collaboration happening.
So it comes back to requirements, right? If you need that type of complex machine being designed properly by a bunch of people doing it, that's how you do it.
And a bunch of diverse people,
well,
so that the actual hardware and software that's emerging is coming from that diverse collaboration.
That's where I'm going to ask a question that I think I disagree. I don't think the solution has anything to do with gender. I think that it's a matter of accomplishing what has been planned and designed to get done. However, I think the planning and the design, the determination of the requirements, the understanding of the not only the gender views, but the cultural views, all of the different angles that you look at stuff. I need to have somebody with me when I'm doing a design who's hard-skilled technical and going to tell me what I can't do to keep my feet on the ground with my blue sky ideas. So we need that type of thing. But we really need the different genders, the different cultures, the different views to determine what we should be doing, understand what is the problem, and figure out what is the solution.
And we need the different processes. And both, you know, in the range of men and women out there, both men and women are expert collaborators, and both men and women are not expert collaborators. But
with each other and across.
And are not, yeah. But we have got to focus more towards collaboration, and as a more feminine aptitude, that needs to come more into the base of the process at the beginning of any of these design processes. So, and maybe equally to be that being more tick boxed in the meritocracy sheets when we decide who's good or not. Maybe collaboration should actually get a slightly more up rating, or get a 10, a score of, you need to mark out of 10 on collaboration rather than 5 in the past. That would shift things massively into a meritocracy which actually was more gender diverse.
You couldn't have hit a more important word to use than collaboration, because I'm a consultant and advisor by career. If I come in and I start looking at your stuff and telling you what to do, what value am I really adding, right? What I want to do is I want to add to what you've done, because you've been pushing something to a certain point and you get a different point of view. Again, gender, cultural experience, background. I've worked across different continents. I'm from Canada, but I worked a lot in America, and just the multiple cultures in the different parts of America that you go to, let alone when you're going in places like Africa, Middle East, and Asia. All of the different views from all of these different points of view can only make the answer stronger.
But we do have a situation where in certain East European countries, Estonia, Latvia, Romania, over 30% of coders and programmers are women. And in Asia, over 30% of startups, tech startups, are women. So what is going wrong in the UK, in Western Europe, in America? Why is there still this resistance, this kind of slightly, what one could see as a kind of tectonic plates hitting each other as we reach this kind of real peak point in 2013, where literally every other day in major newspapers, in New Statesman, in Guardian, on television, a women's issue is coming up front, about how a woman, not always in technology, has not been fairly treated, or is getting a nasty Twitter stream, or is, Now, let's be clear, we know for sure that in masculine culture, 90% of men are out there thinking great, doing great, liberalised moving forward, enjoying collaboration, enjoying diversity.
Or at least not getting in the way.
And encouraging as well, and some good mentoring going on, and some really excellent programs and case studies. But there is still this very small percentage of strong misogyny, fearful men who are fighting back against change which is happening. Yeah, and we maybe have reached a point where men need to actually say, this is not okay. This is tarring all the rest of us with a bad brush.
We've been saying that for a long time.
Well, I don't think, if you search in the media for men who dare to say that in their journalistic outputs, it's very few. And I understand why, because it's quite a scary place to go. If you're in a pub, if you're in a locker room, if you're in the workplace, and one of the males around you makes a derogative comment about a woman, whether it's the female boss or whatever, or one of the younger women, how many men actually say, sorry, that's not okay. You shouldn't be saying that.
Can I ask the opposite? If it's a group of women and they make a comment about the male boss, do you have more women in that group pointing out that they shouldn't say that? Do they act differently?
The first reaction to that is that is a very rare occurrence in women's groups. It's a very small percentage of our time is actually being derogative about men. It isn't something we spend a lot of time on.
If
and
I'm
the
in a group,
second point
it's
is,
not a
if
woman,
I am
so.
in a group where a woman does that, yes, I do point it out. I want an equal situation. I'm not interested in a put down of any part of society, whatever culture, whatever gender. What I want to see is a diverse debate happening where that panel up there has got a mixture of people who give me a set of inputs which I can make my decision from a wide range of thoughts and backgrounds, and equally in the making process of our technologies of the future, whether it's the software, the hardware, the design of the product, whether it's the process, the management, or the direction, I need that to be, I feel, for a fair world and for a wider development, and I really feel a much more positive move forward to be coming from this diverse range of people.
Well, we're half and half world. Why isn't everything that we're doing half and half? I've never quite, I've never really quite understood this. I've grown up in my world and in my family where equality was never really an issue. And in fact, the education that I got when I got to the world was, well, first of all, there's not all that many women around in the office space. There were a few fair bits of techies, but in comparison to some other fields maybe, but I've also realized that the amount of value that you can get from the different perspectives and opinions means you're going to have the right answer, or you're going to have an awful lot more of the components that you need to create the right answer. So that means the work that we're doing will be better, which means I get to do it more effectively, more efficiently.
Together,
I don't have to go back and repeat because I didn't listen.
And the customer base is widened instantly. So, but I think many of us actually, like I could say the same myself, I came through a parental background which was very liberal and very equal, and I probably, alongside many men from my generation, and yourself included, actually took me a while to realize, I was really a bit shocked and a bit naive about what I received when I was out there, And I think many men also are very shocked about what they see happening of men to women, So it is really, I think, a point in time where we all need to go, enough's enough, This is not okay for abusive Twitter streams to be attacking women who actually are just journalists putting out their public opinion.
Yeah, I find this Twitter thing quite disturbing, but more so because if I disagree with you, I'll say so. To disagree with you because you're a woman is irrelevant, and it's stupid, it's childish, I don't understand. And I think the bloke culture that you were just describing, that's the bloke culture. That's part of how they were brought up. That's how they think. Now, that's not the same in every Western country.
No,
I think there's probably, I won't try to offend my host in England too much, but I think that there's a little bit more of that here that has to do with the way that every respectable man becomes quite different after a Friday night at the pub, right?
And it's an old boys networking culture.
Exactly.
So, from many, many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago, it's been based on that boys getting together and supporting each other and making sure they're all okay. So it is at the base, and it's what many boys are reflecting from their fathers. They're seeing their fathers still use that meritocracy. You're in the old boys network, so therefore you're good for the job. It's like so to actually move up through, and they copy that. And so fathers and teachers and male role models have a lot to do at the moment to actually say, no, this is not how it should be. We are out there all together. This is a collaboration environment which is good for all of us, and for the customer in the long run. And actually, sons, students, etc., relearn now, relook at this situation. We have a tiny percentage of highly misogynist men who are not just disagreeing with these women on Twitter, they're abusing. Yeah. And this is a percentage which I think, you know, talking to many male friends and colleagues over the last couple of months, men have been even maybe more shocked about than women. Yeah. And don't know what to do about this, what is probably, you know, maybe it's 1%, 2% of our UK society where it's like just coming out of the woodwork and it's out there. But it is there. And actually, men and women now, you know, need to say stop. For young women, looking at the journalistic scene and the blog scene and looking at, you know, having their opinions out there, I think if I was 16 now and had seen what had happened over this summer to 7 or 8 of our top key women opinion formers, I would have said, well, I couldn't cope with that, I'm going to do another job. And this is what I mean by this being ultimately so negative, these circles of bad media, bad press, bad coverage, and men not coming out and saying, this is not okay.
See, there's a lot of contributing factors as well, like the anonymity of these types of sites allow people to have this freedom that they shouldn't take otherwise.
Social media's got a lot to look at.
So there's major problems with that. And I'm glad you understand that we're not all a part of that old boys network,
not at all.
because we don't get the benefit and we get shut out the same way. So that happens.
I mean, networking great, but let's have it all mixed.
Well, let's just find the people that we need to get the thing done that we're trying to accomplish. Now, just before we wrap up, I'd like to hear a little bit about this conference that's coming up, where we're going to have some real positive action, from what I understand.
Definitely, and we've got a whole series, a focus on this, supporting, celebrating and consolidating, really, women's shift into the digital and how it is shifting the digital marketplace, happening across the next couple of years. And one of the first points of that is a gathering on the 26th of November 2013 at level 39 in Canary Wharf, which is the new incubator space for fintech, for retail tech, for smart cities. And they've partnered in hosting this event, and it's a kind of networking of the networks, a place where all the work that's been done over the last 2 or 3 years, which has been very positive, right through from very large scale companies where they can see the difference this is making from the large data returns that they can analyse, right through to the tiny SME activists, Girls Who Code, Girl Geeks, various other groups who are really going out there, getting girls involved, enabling them to have the confidence and self-belief to come into this wonderful sector. So the 26th of November 2013, we're all gathering there, and it also is seen as an event to hopefully influence the influencers. So enable the next layer of people to already thinking about it, of course, who already know that things have to be done, it needs to be shifted, to see the positive solutions that have already worked for different companies, for SMEs, etc., and to actually network with them and to move forward together on some more further joint activities and cooperations in the future.
I'm looking forward to that. And
great.
I'm proud to say that Intelligent HQ is supporting you on that one as well.
Yes, they're very supportive.
Once again, thanks very much for joining us today. It's a very enlightening conversation. Cheers.
Great. It was good to meet you, Daniel. Thank you.